know parrots could sing.
Well, I don't think they can, but they mimic the sounds that they hear. And that is a very famous YouTube parrot, Tico and the Man. Tico is the parrot, and the man is his owner that plays guitar, and his dad, Tico's owner's dad, plays piano. Anyway, Michael Rebman is here from the Artesia Historical Museum and Art Center, and glad you could be with us today. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, we got talking last week about the founding of Eddy County and the irrigation systems and all the other problems that they had with all that. And there was one other thing about that story that you were telling that we didn't have a chance to mention or whatever. Did you want to go ahead and mention that before we get started with this week? Remind everybody.
Oh yeah, I'll just mention it briefly. It's just a little more of that sort of interesting background information, because I mentioned that the people who built Lake Avalon and the other improvements, they weren't very happy employees. And part of the reason that they weren't happy employees is because the Pecos Irrigation and Improvement Company did not buy the latest in equipment for building large outdoor improvements. So they didn't have the steam-powered shovels and all that. So it was all just pick and axe and horse-drawn wagons for hauling dirt, things like that. So there was a lot of strenuous work without modern improvements. There were some issues too. The contractors who were brought in with the horses and wagons, they were the Seven Rivers families, actually, and they weren't too happy that they didn't get more contracts from the company.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that the workers, the guest workers who were brought in from Mexico, they like I said last week, they would travel through Phoenix to get to their tent cities where they were allowed to live on company land. But the company owns some of the businesses in the town of Phoenix, that little town where it was mostly bars and gambling dens and other questionable businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was because they wanted the employees to stop in there, drink at the bar, and then all the money that they received for their paychecks would go back to the company, because the company owns those businesses.
The old company store routine there. So, but yeah, we didn't quite get all that information in, and I want to give you an opportunity to share that. This week, you wanted to talk about the movie Chisholm, and the movie Chisholm stars John Wayne, and it is purportedly based on or tells the story of the Lincoln County Wars. But anybody that's a historian, such as yourself, it's not that, right?
I would say it's very, very not good overall. Not just in terms of history. As a movie, it's not a very good movie.
Well, it came out in 1970. John Wayne, Forrest Tucker, Christopher George, Ben Johnson are listed as stars in the movie, and Glenn Corbett, Andrew Pine, Bruce Cabot. He was in a lot of John Wayne movies at the time as well. Tell us, so what, and Linda Day George, I didn't realize that. Anyway, where would you like to take us on this? Did they intentionally try to make a bad movie, or?
Well, my personal theory is that it was just intended to be a generic John Wayne Western. That at some point they rewrote the script. This is my theory. I have not found anything to actually prove this. It's my theory. That they rewrote a generic script to add some Lincoln County stuff.
Okay.
But they didn't they didn't actually find a book to verify information. They just went off of things they remembered from seeing 20 years ago. That's kind of my personal theory. Another theory is that they might have tried to do something close to the Lincoln County War, but they then watched Paint Your Wagon and decided they wanted to one-up that town destruction scene with a lot more cattle, so they redid the movie that way too. Because overall, it's the last 30 minutes of the movie is pure fantasy, and a lot of the remaining part of the movie is just a really bad movie.
Mm-hmm.
The costuming is not good at all. It looks like they went to Tractor Supply Company and bought a lot of modern, for the 60s, modern ranch clothing. You watch it and you immediately see right away things like they're wearing belt loops with belts holding up their trousers. There's obnoxiously bright colors for some clothing that you wouldn't find out in New Mexico in 1878. The women's costumes are just not even close to 1870s dresses. They look like 1960s dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the casting was not very good. Because, of course, I mean, you try to turn John Wayne into John Chisholm, and that does not really work, because John Chisholm was 5'8", of sort of a medium build. He had a very large mustache. Of course, John Wayne is 6'4", and he was. That's another thing. John Chisholm was in his 50s during the Lincoln County War. John Wayne was, of course, in his late 60s. He had a noticeable late 60s sort of stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for the John Chisholm character, they could have gone with John Astin. He would have been a better choice.
Okay.
Yeah, from the original Addams Family.
Addams Family, yeah. I was going to say it sounds like the Addams Family guy. So.
Yeah, because he was shorter. He had a mustache. He had that right build for John Chisholm. He was a little too young to portray John Chisholm, about 12 years younger in 1970. But on the other hand, John Chisholm was known for having a bit of a sense of humor. Of course, John Astin had a significant sense of humor. John Wayne didn't really have a sense of humor in the movie.
Right. More serious character. And the thing about it, in the movie, all the names that you associate with that are characters that are in the movie. Lawrence Murphy is played by Forrest Tucker. James Pepper by Ben Johnson. Glenn Corbett plays Pat Garrett. You have Alex McSween, Sheriff Brady. Henry Tunstall is played by Patrick Knowles.
Are you looking at IMDb right now?
That's where I'm at.
That's where I'm at too, actually.
Yeah.
I admit that the version that I watched was dubbed in Hungarian, so I had to look back and forth at the cast listing, because the casting was really problematic. Because Billy the Kid, he was called the Kid because his age was unknown, but he's between 15 and 17. He was a scrawny teenager who could barely do the physical labor involved in ranching, so that's why John Tunstall was fine with him being more of a gunman working for him.
Right.
And of course, Billy the Kid was played by a guy in his late 20s.
Right.
Lawrence Murphy was in his, if I remember correctly, he was in his 40s, early 40s. But he was portrayed by a really old man.
Right, Forrest Tucker. Yeah.
And the most absurd casting, I think, was John Henry Tunstall, who was 24 when he was killed, was portrayed by a man in his, I think in his 60s.
Patrick Knowles, who was born in 1911, so the movie came out, 70?
Yes, so he was 59 years old.
59, yeah.
Yeah, a 59-year-old man portraying a 24-year-old man. That was a bit absurd, and the only ones who were close in age were Alexander and Susan McSween. They were portrayed by, let me look through my notes. McSween was, of course, they were both in their 30s, if I remember correctly. Yes, no, McSween, Alexander was 41, Susan was 33 in 1878, portrayed by actors who were 34 and 27.
Mm-hmm.
And I think think Sally Chisholm was also portrayed by someone who was 27, 26. She was 18, I believe, at the time of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And something else interesting that makes me think that was something else that was changed to be Lincoln County right before they started filming. Dan Nodine, James Pepper, Amos Patton, Juan Delgado, they did not exist.
So
and in fact, that's one of those bizarre things where they mixed up history. Is that Juan Baptiste Wilson was fired as a justice of the peace before Sheriff Brady was killed.
Uh-huh.
And that was a scene in the movie where Murphy somehow traveled the hundreds of miles to Santa Fe overnight to talk to the governor to get him to make those changes.
Right.
So there's a lot of little things like that, like how is it possible that John Chisholm could travel from his ranch house south of Roswell all the way to the town of Lincoln in just a couple hours, when even on hard riding would take 2 days to get from Roswell to Lincoln.
Looks like they filmed the movie in Mexico.
And that was quite obvious, too.
And the ranch house, the Chisholm Ranch House in the film, is the exact same house used for the movie Big Jake. So they didn't even make an effort to recreate a different house or create a different house in line with what might have been in Lincoln County at that time frame. So,
and they placed in the middle of a valley, too, which if you've driven around Roswell, there's no tall hills.
That's right. That's right. Well, you've seen that in movies all the time. I mean, they'll film a movie in California that's supposed to take place in Oklahoma, and there's mountains. And it's like, now, come on. We know there's no mountains in Oklahoma. But we've seen that. But John Wayne was such a huge Western star that I'm sure when they came to him to do the movie, it's all right, we're going to do it, but we're going to do it this way, and in order to get him to be in the movie. But who remains? Let's see. The country of origin Spanish, filming locations in the J.W. Evans Eves Movie Ranch in Malibu Creek State Park, Rancho Marley, Durango, Mexico, and had a budget at the time of $4 million. So.
And what's surprising about that too is that it was filmed in Mexico, and yet it was a very Anglo cast.
That's right.
And which is odd because Lincoln was a very Hispanic town in the 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
And all the and many of the people involved in the Lincoln County War were Hispanic. And Pat Garrett, who had a strange, well, he wasn't even involved in the war at this point, so I'm not sure why he was there.
Right.
But he married locally. He married he married two different Hispanic women. One died shortly after the marriage, and and they didn't appear in the movie until right close to the ones who went trying to let Chisholm know what was going on. They're the ones who were being forced to build the barricades. So that is a little bizarre, and really bizarre is the quite pointless scene where Chisholm goes to what's supposed to be I guess, Fort Stanton, because Colonel Dudley was there.
Mm-hmm.
But that looked nothing like Fort Stanton or any sort of frontier fort at all. There's no garrison flag. There was that strange stone masonry wall that was crumbling. And this brief interaction with 5 people who are supposed to be, I think they're supposed to be Mescalero Apache people, but they were dressed like the sort of generic Hollywood Plains Indians characters.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the guy who played the chief was from Iraq, so that's also weird.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, I'm not sure how well they did at the box office with it, or if it was popular at all. But anybody who's lived in this area and is familiar with the actual Lincoln County War knows that the movie is not what you want to watch if you want to get an idea of what happened in the Lincoln County War at that time.
Oh, definitely. It's just pure fantasy. It's like the sort of public perception of what the war was put to film instead of someone who actually read a book about it trying to create a movie out of a book.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Pat Garrett, everybody associates Pat Garrett with Billy the Kid, so of course he was there in the movie, even though he was an employee of Pete Maxwell at the time of the war. And it's just not a good portrayal of any aspect of New Mexico history, I'd say. It's just a generic Western movie that they, instead of calling the main character Rusty Shackelford, they called him John Chisholm.
Right. Could have called him someplace else and had the war someplace else, but but Hollywood has done that. They do that all the time, and sometimes people understand what they're seeing, and a lot of times they don't have a clue. So, well, good. Well, we got about a minute left. We're still in August. You have your exhibit on display in the Art Center, the Fashionable Founding Fathers fashion exhibit.
Yes, that is open until the end of September.
Okay.
It's viewable in the Art Center, but be sure to stop by at the main building, which is the old river stone-covered house. We are open 10 to 1, 2 to 4, Tuesday through Saturday.
Good. And I'm sure you're working on some upcoming exhibits. Any teasers or any hints to what's coming up down the road that you want to share today, or just kind of wait until we get a little closer?
Let's wait till we get a little closer, but I just want to hint that the November exhibit will have a lot of paperwork involved.
There you go. That's always it's fun for somebody, I guess, the paperwork part. So, well,
and just one last parting comment. Despite what Hollywood showed in that movie, the people involved in the Lincoln County War were in their 20s and 30s. So young people can make a significant impact on local and national history. Just something to remember.
That's right. All right, Michael, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, and look forward to chatting with you next week.
All right, thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap up the